The king and queen of Siam had many daughters, and the queen said that it confused her to have to remember so many names. One day the king decided to call them January, February, March, till he came to the youngest, whom he called September. The king of Siam had a peculiar habit. Instead of receiving gifts on his birthday, he gave them. One year on his birthday, not having anything else handy, he gave each of his daughters a green parrot in a golden cage, and they spent an hour every day in teaching them to talk. Presently all the parrots could say "God save the king" and "Pretty Polly." But one day when Princess September went to say good morning to her parrot, she found it lying dead at the bottom of its golden cage. She burst into a flood of tears, and nothing that her maids of honor could say comforted her. She cried so much that the maids of honor told the queen, and the queen said,
"Tell her to stop this nonsense. Put her to bed without any supper."
So they put Princess September to bed as quickly as they could and left her by herself. And while she lay in her bed, she saw a little bird hop into her room. Then the little bird began to sing, and he sang a beautiful song all about the lake and the king's garden and the willow trees that looked at themselves in the still water and the goldfish that glided in and out of the branches that were reflected in it. When he had finished, the princess was not crying any more.
That was a very nice song.
Would you care to have me in place of your parrot? It's true that I'm not so pretty to look at, but on the other hand I have a much better voice.
Princess September clapped her hands with delight, and then the little bird hopped on to the end of her bed and sang her to sleep. When she awoke next day, the little bird was still there, and as she opened her eyes he said,
"Good morning."
Now I want to show you to my 8 sisters.
Then she went through the palace and called on each of the princesses. And for each of them the little bird sang a different song. But the parrots could only say "God save the king" and "Pretty Polly." At last she showed the little bird to the king and the queen. They were surprised and delighted.
"I knew I was right to send you to bed without any supper.
This bird sings much better than the parrots.
I should have thought you got quite tired of hearing people say, 'God save the king.' I can't think why those girls wanted to teach their parrots to say it too."
The sentiment is admirable, and I never mind how often I hear it. But I do get tired of hearing those parrots say "Pretty Polly."
But they say it in 7 different languages.
I dare say they do, but it reminds me too much of my counselors. They say the same thing in 7 different ways and it never means anything in any way they say it.
The princesses were vexed at this, and the parrots looked very glum indeed. But Princess September ran through all the rooms of the palace, singing like a lark, while the little bird flew round and round her singing like a nightingale. Things went on like this for several days, and then the 8 princesses put their heads together.
My poor September, we are sorry for the death of your beautiful parrot.
It must be dreadful for you not to have a pet bird as we have.
So we have all put our pocket money together, and we are going to buy you a lovely green and yellow parrot.
Thank you for nothing. I have a pet bird which sings the most charming songs to me, and I don't know what on earth I should do with a green and yellow parrot.
Well, my dear, it's absurd to talk of your bird when the little fellow flies in and out just as he likes.
Do you mind our asking where your bird is now?
He has gone to pay a visit to his father-in-law.
And what makes you think he'll come back?
He always does come back.
Well, my dear, if you'll take our advice you won't run any risks like that. If he comes back,
and mind you, if he does, you'll be lucky. Pop him into the cage and keep him there. That's the only way you can be sure of him.
But I like to have him fly about the room.
Safety first.
They got up and walked out of the room, shaking their heads, and they left September very uneasy. It seemed to Princess September that her little bird had been away a long time. Something might have happened to him. What with hawks and with snares, you never knew what trouble he might get into. Besides, he might forget her, or he might take a fancy to somebody else.
Makes you think he'll come
That
back?
would be dreadful. She wished he were
If he
safely
does,
back
you'll be
again.
lucky.
Suddenly September heard a tweet just behind her ear.
I wondered what on earth had become of you.
I thought you'd wonder that. The fact is I very nearly didn't come back tonight at all. My father-in-law was giving a party and they all wanted me to stay, but I thought you'd be anxious.
September felt her heart go thump against her chest, and she made up her mind to take
What
no
makes
more
you think
risks.
he'll come back?
She carried him over to the cage, popped him in, and shut the door on him that for a moment he could think of nothing to say. But in a moment or two he hopped up to the ivory perch and said,
What is the joke?
There's no joke, but some of Mama's cats are prowling about tonight, and I think you're much safer in there.
Well, just for this once I don't mind, so long as you let me out in the morning.
He ate a very good supper, and then began to sing. But in the middle of his song he stopped.
I don't know what is the matter with me, but I don't feel like singing tonight.
Very well, go to sleep instead.
But when the dawn broke she was awakened by the little bird calling her at the top of his voice.
Wake up, wake up. Open the door of this cage, and let me out. I want to have a good fly while the dew is still on the ground.
You are much better off where you are.
Let me out.
And he tried to slip through the bars of the cage, but of course couldn't, and he beat against the door, but of course he couldn't open it. Then the 8 princesses came in and looked at him.
My dear, you are very wise to take our advice.
He will soon get used to the cage.
And in a few days, he will quite forget that he had ever been free.
But as soon as they were gone he began to cry again.
Let me out, let me out.
Don't be such an old silly. I've put you in the cage because I'm so fond of you. I know what's good for you much better than you do yourself. Sing me a little song, and I'll give you a piece of sugar.
But the little bird stood in the corner of his cage looking out at the blue sky, and never sang a note.
What's the good of sulking? Why don't you sing and forget your troubles?
How can I sing? I want to see the trees and the lake and the green rice growing in the fields.
I'll take you out every day.
It's not the same thing. The rice fields and the lake and the willow trees look quite different when you see them through the bars of a cage.
The bird wouldn't sing a song, and he wouldn't eat a thing. The princess was a little anxious at this, and asked her sisters what they thought about it.
You must be fun.
But if he won't eat, he'll die.
That would be very ungrateful of him.
He must know that you are only thinking of his own good.
If he is obstinate and dies, it'll serve him right, and you'll be well rid of him.
September didn't see how that was going to do her very much good, but they were 8 to 1 and all older than she, so she said nothing.
Perhaps he'll have got used to this cage by tomorrow.
And next day when she awoke she cried out good morning in a cheerful voice. She got no answer. She gave a startled cry, for there the little bird lay at the bottom on his side, with his eyes closed, and he looked as if he were dead. She opened the door and putting her hand in lifted him out. She gave a sob of relief, for she felt that his little heart was beating still.
Wake up, little bird.
She began to cry and her tears fell on the little bird. He opened his eyes and saw that the bars of the cage were no longer around him.
I cannot sing unless I'm free, and if I cannot sing I die.
Then take your freedom. I shut you in a golden cage because I loved you and wanted to have you all to myself. But I never knew it would kill you. I love you enough to let you be happy in your own way.
He shook himself a little.
Come and go as you will, little bird. I will never put you in a cage anymore.
I will come because I love you, little princess, and I will sing you the loveliest songs I know. I shall go far away, but I shall always come back and I shall never forget you.
But the little princess burst into tears, for it is very difficult to put the happiness of someone you love before your own, and with her little bird far out of sight she felt, all of a sudden, very lonely. When her sisters knew what had happened they mocked her, and said that the little bird would never return.
He will never come
But he
back.
did, at last. And he sang her the beautiful songs he had learned while he was flying up and down the fair places of the world. September kept her window open day and night so that the little bird might come into her room whenever he felt inclined, and this was very good for her. So she grew extremely beautiful. And when she was old enough she married the king of Cambodia and was carried on a white elephant all the way to the city in which the king lived. But her sisters never slept with their windows open, so they grew extremely ugly, as well as disagreeable, and when the time came to marry them off they were given away to the king's counselors with a pound of tea and a Siamese cat.